Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another exciting episode of Paul Brown Show. This evening, I have a special guest. He's Mr. John Barnett. He's the president and founder of Thug, True Healing Under God. How you doing there, Mr. Barnett?
Doing good. How you doing?
Great.
Good.
You're a civil rights leader. How long have you been doing that, and what made you want to get involved with civil rights?
Well, after my brother's shooting death in '94, I attended the Million Man March.
Okay.
They told us to go home and write one brother in prison. So I came home and started writing my brother's killer in prison, which was my cousin. I then started Thug, which was True Healing Under God. It's what I received after I wrote my brother's killer in prison. I used the word thug because I was a big fan of Tupac Shakur. I was intrigued by his artistry and his gift. Not so much the gangster rap, but his gift of poetry and his background. In 2001, I wrote Reverend Sharpton in jail during a nonviolent protest in Vieques, Puerto Rico. He went to jail, and I literally wrote him in jail. I wrote 3 letters, symbolic to my brother being shot 3 times. Put his picture on the back of the envelope, and a week later he wrote me back, called me, and invited me to New York City, and spoke live in front of the United Nations building. And that was the beginning of our relationship and friendship. And so he immediately put me over the city of Charlotte to deal with issues as it relates to civil rights. And I was the chapter president from 2002 to 2008 for the National Action Network. Then in '08, when President Barack Obama got in office, our calls increased, almost from 5 a week to like 20 calls a week. So I took it upon myself, after reading a book that Dr. King went full-time in civil rights, after Rosa Parks was denied her seat in the bus, 7 days later he went full-time. So I just walked out on faith and went full-time in civil rights. So we've been full-time since '08, operating in 8 states.
Now let's really get into some of the issues that we're having in our country. First of all, we recently got the decision back from Ferguson. What's your views on the decision that was made, and what impact does this play on us as a community?
Well, the impact that it made, I think it was a ripple effect. It shook the whole country. But I think in some sense, we prepared ourselves this time for the worst. I think with Trayvon Martin's case, it took the wind out of us. But this particular time, at least we had our hands over our stomach. But at the same time, it's definitely sad in this country where we see young black men being shot down and riddled with bullets. Sean Bell shot down 51 times in New York City. You know, in the end, the family won a lawsuit, but how do you shoot at a man's car 51 times? Just here in Charlotte, we coming up on our court date, December 11th, for Jonathan Farrell. I've been fighting and rallying in the streets for him. He was shot at 12 times.
Correct.
By Officer Carrick, and shot 10 times. And now we have Michael Brown. So it appears to me, and this is not being racist at all, it's a reality. I've yet to see a white man or a white female get shot down and riddled with bullets, as if one bullet is not enough. You know, you braze me with a bullet, I'm gonna stop what I'm doing. But it seems though there's a little extra that comes with, as it relates to black males in particular. And it's a very sad situation. It's something we need to deal with in this country.
I know some of the reports that were coming from Ferguson is that the prosecutors were kind of like giving signs that they didn't want to prosecute the officer. What's your opinion on that?
I think that we are a product of our society. And when I visited Ferguson, I went to Michael Brown's funeral with Reverend Sharpton and others. And when you go to the city, it seems like a nice city, kind of reminds you of Pineville.
Okay.
But I can see that the incident where it happened at, Michael Brown was shot literally in the projects. You know, I went to the death site of Michael Brown's location, and it's like crossing a bridge. So I'm in this black community. So when you go into Ferguson, it looks like Pineville, but then you go a little further down, it looks like a very urban, black neighborhood. And I think it was that moment where I realized that's what's going on. You know, you got the good cop coming out of, or bad cop, should I say, coming out of Ferguson, looks like Pineville, and then going into this black community and then challenging Michael Brown. I think conversation should have ended that situation, and it ended up in death. People got to realize, the mother was not able to embrace her son. Michael Brown laid on the ground for 4.5 hours. The police were scared to come into the neighborhood because, you're in the projects.
Correct.
So I think it's very sad that we get to the point where the verdict, when it came out, the media played upon it too. It's kind of like they built us up for this big climax. And then in the end, you know, now we're disappointed. And I guess like the 60s when Dr. King was shot, you know, as the book by James Baldwin is called, The Fire Next Time. So that's where we are now. Our anger sometimes comes through fire. Someone contacted me on Facebook this morning, and he said, John, why are they burning Ferguson? That was just a basic question. And I could only give her the response that Dr. King gave in 1962. He had said a community that feel as though they don't have a stake in that community or have some type of connection with that community, they will unconsciously try to destroy. And that's what happens. Yeah, they burning down buildings, but just look on it the flip side. If I play devil's advocate, yes, there's an auto zone in that black community, but we don't own it. Yes, there's a Subway there, but we don't own it. So going into the liquor store, the Subway, burning down the QT, and I'm not condoning violence, we don't own it. So whether it's sitting right next door to my house or not, I'm going to burn it down and let America know that I'm angry. Reverend Sharpton taught me that, John, when you're fighting civil rights, don't whisper. If someone's got their foot on your foot, you can't whisper and say, please, you know, take your foot off my foot. You have to scream. And he taught me two things. And I think that's why we've been successful in what we do. He told me, James Brown taught him, that if you want to, you know, expose crack houses in 1991 in New York City, do what I do in soul music. He said, do two things. He said, be loud and be dramatic. Okay. And when we look at Muhammad Ali, he was loud and dramatic. Might not like Howard Stern or Rush Limbaugh, you know, you're in that position of hosting.
Correct. But
they're loud and they're dramatic. Steve Smith, you know, playing with Baltimore now. Loud, dramatic. Tupac, those are the ones we don't forget, simply because they're loud and dramatic.
So after the Michael Brown incident, what do we as parents tell our children, especially our boys? What do we do?
Well, I tell you what, in school, they teach us math, history, they teach us trigonometry, which we never use, and they even teach us about dissecting frogs. There's one thing that they don't teach us in school though, and it's the law. Very seldom do you get real information on the law. You get a speeding ticket, ask for a prayer for judgment. You know, you got a warrant for your arrest, get a stricken. You know, you got a very serious charge where your son has did a shoplifting charge. If it's his first offense, then ask for, you know, a special charge that they call, God, I forgot the name of that charge, but it's a charge that reduces that. Okay. And it's literally a slap on the hand. Deferred prosecution is the word. But if you don't know that, then you'll be a slave to the public defender's decision on what's best for your son. So the goal is to teach our young kids the law, respect.
So how does you feel when you're going into these jails to try to get someone who may be innocent?
One of my strongest resources that I have, I'll be honest, is the attorneys that I work with. Mm-hmm. So, you know, Eric Montgomery, the Darren Haleys, the Timothy Smiths, you know, I can go on and on with the lawyers that I know. But to know that our organization is backed by 35 lawyers in 13 states empowers me to, I ain't gonna say threaten, but either you're gonna deal with me or my lawyer's gonna file suit. So I think that's the strongest resource I have. Whenever you look at civil rights, Dr. King had an attorney. Reverend Sharpton has a Jewish attorney in New York. Correct. Jesse Jackson has a lawyer. Reverend Sharpton had Johnny Cochran before he passed away. So the strongest resource that we have, and I think all civil rights organizations need to have, is a lawyer. I mean, people wrote, you know, there's a lot of groups out here that demonstrate when people get shot. Correct. You know, and when they demonstrate, I commend them on doing that. But you have to empower yourself first. So as the Bible says, equip yourself first. Read the word, put on the whole armor of God. Mm-hmm. So the armor is symbolic to the resources that we have. We just don't talk. We're not just going to protest, Captain Steve. Yeah, we did a press conference, but no, we filed in suit this week.
Correct.
For $500,000. That's the concept. And that's typed up by a white lawyer in Columbia, and he's going to take it to the courthouse. And so that's power to me. Correct. Than just ramping and raving and staging events and doing concerts, and you know, I don't do the entertainment piece. It's all about making sure we get something structured in hand and in these courthouses to fight justice. I had a lady, I just won 3 lawsuits in the last 60 days. Okay. I had a lady at the, I ain't gonna say, well, I can't say the hotel. I think they gave her a gag order, they didn't give me one. A white lady at the hotel in Pineville, North Carolina, tells a black employee who's been there 2 years, a white lady's been there 20, she said, I'm not looking forward to these drunk party animals coming to Charlotte. And the black lady was like, well, who are you talking about? She's like, I'm talking about the CIAA. So she just called 50,000 black people
Correct.
monkeys and drunk party animals, as if we were untamed. So I negotiated with the lawyer without an attorney for 5 hours. I did threaten. I said, look here, I'm going to tell the president of CIAA and all of the rooms that he already has booked for $350,
Correct.
and the room is only $140, I'm going to make sure that nobody stays at this hotel. And I have the power to do that through channel 3, 6, 9, and 14. We negotiated for 5 hours. I'm in this South Park hotel. He's got his nice cufflinks on, custom-made suit. The Indian guy's probably paying him $500 an hour, right? And I literally go in there and represent my client for free.
Correct.
And a week later, they cut her a check. Now, what if I had not stood up? What if she could not have gone in there and dealt with those vicious animals,
Correct.
speaking of the lawyer and the HR director and the owner of this hotel? So we were able to, and so we feel good about that because something bad happened. We
Correct.
talked about a whole race of people. And so it's important to address that issue.
Mr. Barnett, just like Dr. King, there's a lot of people don't like you.
A whole lot.
You know, and that has to be a good feeling because of the positive things that you're doing for people. So how does that make you feel, just like Dr. King?
Well, as I love studying civil rights, and I remember Malcolm X saying that the media has the ability to make an innocent man look guilty and a guilty man look innocent. So in saying that, I take it as the highest honor that could be given to me, knowing that when I get to the point in my life where racist cops and blacks in power who have forgot about their race are not fearful of our power, and that power is our resources, or it could be God backing me. When they get to the point where they get comfortable with me, then I feel as though I've lost all my power, all my resources. Eric Montgomery, one of my favorite lawyers in Charlotte, told me once that you're ungoverned. I said, what you mean I'm ungoverned? He said, well, I can't stand in front of the courthouse and protest like you, John. The state bar, write me up. He said, but can't nobody tell you to do nothing. He said, so you literally have more power than me. I said, well, there's 3 people tell me what to do. Reverend Sharpton, my mama, and my pastor, Amir May. And all 3 of them crazy. So I think it's important that we stay grassroots. It's important. I'm grassroots. I don't get any funding from the city of Charlotte. I'm not begging them for crumbs off the table of the slave master's table. He eat a steak and I'm getting a piece of bread. I think it's important. I think I heard it from a speech from the Black Panthers. It's imperative that you keep your organization grassroots, because once you begin to get resources, NAACP was funded in the 70s by Jews, you know, and I'm a member. But sometime when you have power over someone, then you may not be able to move the way you want to. So it's important that we keep things grassroots.
I know there's some other cases that's going on that you've dealt with just in the Charlotte or in the Rock Hill area. Tell us about another one that,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, because there's a lot that you probably could say,
I tell people I got more cases than R. Kelly got hits.
Correct.
Rock Hill, South Carolina, a young black man named Denzel Dunham. His mother went to church with me at Freedom Temple Ministries. I've been knowing her for like 20 years. She called me one night frantically. You know, my son was pulling in the driveway to have lunch with me, and the cop gets out the car and points a gun at him. I said, for real? For what? She said, for not wearing a seatbelt. I'm thinking she's going to say you got drugs in the car. So he basically pulled him over. This cop name was Cameron Kirby. Ironically enough, I got a chief of police fired in Chesney, South Carolina 10 years ago. His name was Jeff Kirby. It's near Gaffney. So I thought that was ironic, but it was like deja vu to me. So he pulls out the gun when the guy pulls in the driveway, getting ready to have lunch with his mother. The mother's on the porch seeing everything. Thank God that she was the witness. And the young man said, man, why are you putting your gun out on me? What you say, boy? He runs over to him, pushes him, busts his lip, puts him in handcuffs, and locks him up for resisting arrest. But prior to putting the handcuffs on him, he calls for backup and says he's fighting me. He forgot the body cam was on.
Correct.
This is Friday night. Saturday, I think the chief was on vacation. The chief gets the video emailed by the captain. And I was in Maryland working on a case, Baltimore, Maryland. And so I told the mother, don't go into that room with that chief of police unless you go in there with a black man with a suit on. And I've been encouraging all of the mothers in Charlotte. I don't know where y'all are, but if you're a single mother and you're going in school at CMS, MESS meaning CMS, MESS. If you're going inside these schools that's been already suspended, that have already suspended 10,000 black boys, and yet we still put Junebug back on the bus the next year. So you got a problem with that. So if you're going inside these schools with these teachers and counselors and principals, and most of them are white, then take a man in there with you with a suit on. I don't care if you got to find your drunk uncle. Clean him up, put a suit on, because just the presence of a man in the room would change the atmosphere. I'm afraid, slightly afraid of 100 black women in front of McDonald's if they don't serve me a burger. But I'm a little bit more afraid if I see 100 brothers with bow ties.
Correct.
So I think it's important that we have that male presence. So she didn't meet with him. We met with him Thursday. When we got in there, Brother Paul, Chief sat down. Hey, Mr. Barnett, how you doing? Because, you know what I do.
Correct.
He
he knows he's about to come.
He know I don't bite my tongue. And Reverend Sharpton taught me how to shoot from the hip. So he just want to let you know right now, he slid a piece of paper to him. He said, we've dropped the charges. Now, this ain't the DA, this the chief.
Correct.
We dropped the charges because he got resisting arrest. He never had a charge in his life. He's 23 years old. He slid us another paper, said we're going to give him his $1,000 bond back. Then he slid another paper to us saying that he don't have a court date and we're going to expunge his face off the website. And I pulled up a number. It was on my cell phone, and I had a number of 987. And I said, I appreciate you doing that. I said, you know what this number is? I showed it to the chief, showed it to his captain. You know, he brought a black cop in there. Right? You always do that, the Sanford Son effect, right? And then, of course, I showed the mother, 987. I said, I appreciate you, because this number could be 988. The chief said, what number is that? I said, this is how many black people have been shot in this country last year. Shot. You just prevented one from not being shot by firing the cop. So, a week later, they worked on a settlement.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so that same day, I'm actually eating lunch, and Channel 9 calls me and say, hey, we seen on your Facebook page you fired a cop. I said, it's just the 14th cop I done got fired. I don't brag about it. I just posted this picture and say, hey, y'all, we got another cop fired. Never called the media. Media called me. I guess they follow my page on Facebook, right? John Barnett, Roman numeral 1, 2, and 3. I got 3 pages, so thought I'd plug that. So Channel 6 called, then Channel 3 calls, then Fox News calls, and then News 14 calls. So about 5 o'clock, the chief said he can't take it no more. He calls the mother and said, hey, we want to work out some more forms of closure for you.
Okay. All
right? So 2 days later, they meet with the chief, and they offer $20,000. I tell the mother to tell them to stick the check up their rectum.
Correct.
That's literally what I said. I didn't use rectum. I used some other choice words. A week later, it's been said that, he received $100,000 for just having a gun being pointed at him. And so we got a cop fired, but the troubling thing is when I left Rock Hill going down 77, coming back to Charlotte, I said to myself, I wonder how many more Cameron Kirbys are out there.
Correct.
And in the movie of Schindler's List, in the front of that CD, you'll see the words that if you can save one soul, you've saved the world entire. But I saved Denzel, but I'm concerned about the other cops that's out here that Trump is mounting up to challenge us. I'll give it 72 hours, we'll have another shooting of a white cop shooting a black man.
How does that make you feel, knowing that you may possibly have an impact on saving the life of an individual?
It's something that I thank God for. I think my faith in God allows me to continue to do what I do. Say what you want to say about Whitney Houston. She was godly. When she sung, you could feel the godliness. Correct. She sung a gospel song, I think, with Kelly Price the night before she died. Dr. King was godly. Malcolm X, even though he was in Islam, he was godly. And I think it's not only what I believe in my faith with God, but it's a responsibility as a man on this earth, in particular a black man on this earth, to take care of my brothers and my sisters and then help everyone else on the outside or abroad. So I think it's very important that I think the motivation is that I love what I do. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it next week. Do it probably until I die. But I think that my hidden goal is I pray that a lot more Afro-American men will step up and do the same thing. And I'll tell you why. When I have to go to Beaufort, North Carolina, 6 hours with my Vice President, Mr. James Welcome, and my assistant, Jennifer Nix, I shouldn't have to go to Beaufort. I'm gonna tell you why. Because there's already some presence of black men there. Why did Dr. King have to go to Tennessee and get shot when there were already some men there? But we have to go, so we have to inspire hope, put some strategies in place. But there's already some men there. So the mystery, I guess, is that why aren't they standing up? If I can go to Beaufort and stand up, then why can't the men that's already there, the deacon board, the trustees, why can't they do the same thing? And so I think we got a lot of work to do. And I never forget what Reverend Sharpton told me. We was in South Carolina at a church. He was on his presidential campaign. And he said, John, they're always calling for me and Jesse. He said, but the reality of it is that we need 100 Jesse Jacksons and 100 Al Sharptons with all of these cases going on across the country.
How much does fear impact on you getting that individual, like you said, they are already men in that community. How much does fear play on them not getting involved?
The first thing that I do when I go to a city, I stage justice rallies. And it's the same blueprint that Malcolm X did and Dr. King. And so I literally study those two guys all the time. I'm on YouTube. People will listen to rap music and Lil Wayne. I'm looking at YouTube and trying to figure out why did Malcolm X say by any means necessary? What did Dr. King mean when he said I might not make it, to the promised land with you? So when I'm studying Dr. King and Malcolm X, I'm looking at, number one, their passion, but number two, that fear. Malcolm X had to break the fear first of the people inside that local church or that mosque, and then motivate them to go outside and make change. So you literally have to do surgery. I call it black mental surgery. So when I go to a city, like yesterday, we went to the city, we threatened to march. One of the daughters of the Braille's brothers had stated that she was on Facebook and she said, we're finally gonna get justice. And she put the link of the story that we did on yesterday. And there was two black guys underneath the post on Facebook that said, not in Carteret County, not down here in Beaufort. So I immediately eliminated that fear by posting on that thread a picture of me and Al Sharpton, and I would put on there, help is on the way. And I let them know I've gotten 17 people out of jail, 8 cops fired and 1 indicted. I wasn't bragging, I'm just trying to break his fear that you can see change, but sometimes things are so ugly and so dark and grim, sometimes people can't even see hope. So, again, Reverend Sharpton taught me that when you go to a city, sometimes, John, the only thing you can put in their hands is a 4-letter word called hope. And that's where everything begins.
Mr. Barnett, you've been a civil rights leader for a number of years, and we've had numerous civil rights leaders in the past. For the younger generation, how would you define a civil rights leader?
For the young generation, I would say that civil rights still exist. I always share the numbers of black men that's in jail to give them a reality. Because when I talk about jails or prisons, I'm talking about their homeboy. I got 9 friends in prison in South Carolina. So when I talk to the young people, talk to that young generation, I let them know I'm just like you. I can get shot in a hoodie just like Trayvon. But the reality of it is that I have to give them those numbers. There's 31,000 inmates in North Carolina, 19,000 black men. South Carolina's number 3 in the country with the most black men in jail, 27,000 inmates and 17,000 are black. Louisiana is number 1 in the country, 72% black men in jail. So I relate to them just on their level. If I'm in Batesford Road, I'm talking to you on a Batesford Road level. If I'm in uptown Charlotte, corporate America, and you're a black man, I'm gonna give you a different story. But I'm gonna have to try my best with the young people, and what I do always is connect with them where they are. I tell the young people with civil rights, it still exists. Take a look at, the coffin of Trayvon Martin. Take a look at the coffin of Sean Bell. Take a look at the coffin of Michael Brown. And know that, Dr. King's and Malcolm X and others did not die, or we don't need to allow them to die in vain. These individuals died for us to vote, and yet we still don't even have a voter registration card. So you have to kind of show them exactly what's going on where they are. I wouldn't talk to, some young kids at a local school in Charlotte about Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. They can't relate. Correct. But I can talk about Lil Wayne and the impact that he has on young people, to promote drugs or condone it to a certain extent. I can talk to them about pulling their pants up, very important. Young people need to pull their pants up. And I always reverse it. I said, what if Dr. King and President Barack Obama walked into the White House and they was encouraging us to vote for them, right? Or follow them to Washington for a march, but they got their pants pulled down. They got gold teeth and gold chains around their neck. I always ask them, would you follow that person? No, the answer is no. But they have on suits. I don't want to get dressed today. It's kind of dress down day. But I put a suit on because I have to project a certain image for those that's watching. So civil rights definitely exists, and it's not going anywhere. I thought Trayvon Martin case was enough, but as we see just, 72 hours ago, that we see that America still has some problems with their, I call stepchildren, which are us.
Voting. I know since the past, they fought Dr. King and a lot of the other leaders. They fought for that right to vote. 2014, we still have a lot of individuals that don't vote. Why?
I think it goes back to that same quote I told you about earlier. Dr. King saying that if a community feels as though they don't have a stake means you stake it, you stick it in the ground, and it's there, and it shows a mark that it exists. Or you're trying to allow an individual that, hey, I'm over here. You know, they use a stake for water, I think. I don't know, I'm getting old school now. And they would show that this is where the water is. Don't touch this area. And I think that the reason an individual won't get up in the morning after even looking at Medgar Evers, who worked all day long trying to encourage blacks to vote, got home, aspired to go into the kitchen and eat dinner with his wife and kids, and an assassin's bullet out of the woods shot him, and he died right there at his car. Even watching that, hearing about it, the only thing that allows an individual not to get up and go vote is that they feel as though they don't have a stake in the community. I talk to people all the time. Gastonia is probably one of the worst cities to profile people. One of the worst I've seen. But I educate the people in that city that you need to file complaints against the police. And I don't think they connect with that because they feel as though nothing's going to happen. But I've proved them wrong because we've gotten officers fired just by filing complaints and pressing charges with the lawyers that I have in place. We got 19 lawyers that's connected to my organization. So we don't just talk, we talk with an impact. And so I think a person, again, does not vote because they feel as though they don't have a stake in that community. They don't feel nobody's representing them.
So when they don't vote, they don't get what they want. But then again, that's when they talk when they
want something.
When they want something.
That's
it's like just like in the instance of they're saying a lot of the negative things about President Obama. But then again, when you have the Republicans getting these votes, why? I mean, you know, that tells that there's something going on. How can he be the president that we want him to be when he's not getting the people around him that's willing to support what he's.
You're exactly right. It's sad. It's like, you know, sometimes people want things for free.
Correct.
You know, but it's important that we got to get out and vote.
Mr. Barnett, we're going to come back. We're going to come back in a little while, and we're going to talk some more about the civil rights and a lot of things that we got going on. Ladies and gentlemen, come on. We'll be back again with Mr. John Barnett.